What can we do to help my boyfriend 21M and I 20F's relationship? Long post, I apologize. There's a bit to unpack here. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years as of April. We started off in a very happy and healthy relationship which seemed to have no problems. We moved in together around 6 months of dating because my mother is a narcissist and honestly, I had enough of it. She constantly blamed me for things, so my partner and his family took me under their wing when I was 17. Throughout our relationship, I realized that my partner avoids conflict. Whenever I would bring up a problem, he will always just make excuses for his behavior or just won't talk at all. One of the major issues we have is that he doesn't really compliment me often or make me really feel special. He only gets me gifts on major holidays, never really does the little things. I brought this up to him and he told me he would try and change, but that, I don't really have the ability to do these things. I'm sorry if I'm not good enough sometimes. I try. Besides, I focus more on the big things, like planning vacations, or trying for our future. I told him the reason why I seek validation so much, but that I am trying to work on it, but the little things would help me feel a lot better. I feel like I'm not asking for much. I don't recall any times he really called me beautiful, pretty, cute, or bought me a surprise gift. He would always get me stuff after I asked for them. The only time he bought me flowers is after I asked him repeatedly. I'm the oldest child of 5. So I have a sense of independence. My mother had a stroke when I was 7 years old and had to always be the mother, because my mother became disabled. I practically raised my 4 younger siblings, but I don't mind. I feel really bad for getting mad at my partner for not knowing how to do much, but his parents really babied him and sometimes still do like he is a child. He is really a mommy's boy and, as much as I don't mind, I told him he should try to be more independent and do things on their own because seeing his parents treat him like a child even though he was older than me rubbed me the wrong way. His excuse is that his mother just likes doing these things. Making his appointments, talking for his feelings, making his food, doing his laundry, driving him everywhere, always asking him what he was doing. When we go out they would always ask when we would be home. Calling him constantly when we are out. It just bothered me. When we first started dating, my partner didn't have a job. I had 2 jobs at this time 17 years old, while going to school full-time as well. Balancing all of these things on top of my head while my partner just played video games all day began to drain me. I told him to get up and get a job because it's unfair for me to be paying the bills and having this stress on me. He put off getting a job for months, but eventually I got him a job where I worked and he really seemed to like it. Now he is a workaholic and always is trying to pick up hours, and for that I am very proud of him. I tell him that every single day that I am proud of the man he's become. Throughout our relationship, I noticed my partner's usage. I have personal boundaries with, and feel as if people in relationships shouldn't watch, especially since we both live together. I especially felt hurt by his actions, because he would never initiate, it was always me. I told him that I wasn't comfortable with him watching while in a relationship with me. He told me that he would stop. 2 months later I found more on his devices while trying to pay our bills for the month on his computer. He had left it open. I got angry at him of course, and I told him once again that his usage was a problem and that I wasn't okay with it, that he needs to stop and stop trying to hide it from me. I ended up consoling him, because he cried to me about the fact that he didn't want to hurt me, and that he has a problem. I felt relief and tried to trust him again, since he broke that trust. I tried to give him many ways to curb his addiction, including leading him out to nature more, and trying to be more around him. I began sending him nudes as well. I felt really hurt by his usage and told him it made me feel like I wasn't what he wanted sometimes. He ended up deleting Twitter because that was a huge trigger for him. Another month passes and while being on his phone we are both open to using each other's devices. I discovered that he was using Twitter on the internet browser to look at. I was very upset. I told him that, for me to trust him again like he wants, he needs to stop using. He can't keep lying to me about his usage. It's one thing to relapse and he tell me that he relapses, in which I asked him to do, but to go out of his way to try and hide it. I told him that he kept pushing my boundaries and that the next time he watches and hides it from me, that I will not hesitate to end the relationship because it shows that he lacks respect for me. Eventually, I gave up on the topic and he seemed like he was doing better. Didn't bring it up again, and slowly began to trust him once again. Took months. I told him that I was proud of him for overcoming his addiction. I wrote him little notes every day, about how much I love him, about how proud I am, about how much he means to me. We began to set out and be on our own in an apartment. We moved into an apartment with our cat. It went great at first. We were both really happy. But I noticed that his old patterns slipped in. We never went on these vacations, and I was always the one making the big moves. I was always the one to make sure the bills were paid every month by going in person and paying or paying online, even though we were 50-50 split on bills. I also told him I would appreciate if he helped around the house a little bit more as well. The only chore he would really do is the dishes, and would only clean if I asked him. Most of the time he would have it and I'd have to redo it, or he would tell me that he didn't know how and told me to show him. I would try to show him, and he would just say, "I don't really feel like it." I brought up his issue of not helping around and that it began to stress me out. He told me that I still haven't shown him how. I told him to just watch a YouTube video on how to do it, because I have other stuff to worry about sometimes, and that is how I learned how to do a lot of the things I do. He got mad at me, and said that he is equally as stressed because he was worried that we wouldn't have enough money. I assured him and told him we did. I've always been the major breadwinner in our relationship. I just told him that I was tired of doing everything cooking for both of us, cleaning, mopping, sweeping, dusting, making sure our house was decorated, feeding cat, driving us both to work. Our main problem is that whenever I would discuss problems with him, he would emotionally shut down and not say anything. Everything I said to him, even constructive criticism, he would take as a personal attack and shut down. I get angry and would say he wasn't listening to me. I told him to at least acknowledge what I am saying by saying, "I understand," shaking his head yes or no. He won't say anything, and I began to unintentionally raise my voice because he just wasn't paying attention. I would calm down and tell him that I don't want to yell at him, but the fact that he isn't listening triggered a deep childhood wound. As a child, my mother would only listen if I yelled, screamed, cried. I tried suggesting ways for him to communicate, like texting if it is easier for him to communicate that way. Yep, continued on him stonewalling me. I admit I have a problem with getting mad unnecessarily, but I have been trying to work on that. But I never personally attack him or his actions. I always apologize if I raised my voice and told him that he didn't deserve for me to yell at him. I realize that him shutting down is a trauma response for him. He had a bad childhood with his grandma who primarily raised him. I tried to not take it too much to heart, but I began to feel like my emotions weren't a priority to him, and just never discussed issues because it always ended up with me consoling him because he would get so upset he would start crying. I felt so bad that I told him it was okay and that it didn't matter, that I didn't mean to hurt him. Eventually, I began to suggest that he attends therapy or get on medication as it helped me in the past. My ex was a narcissist and me physically and emotionally, and healing from that took forever. Therapy and medications worked really well. He just told me that he didn't need it and that he didn't want it. Okay, that's his choice and I respect it. This started a cycle and it got tiring. It was like he didn't care about our relationship, even though he told me he did. He never really showed it. No gifts, no compliments, not helping around the house. He would always hug me, kiss me, dance with me, but the little stuff really mattered and it began to affect my self-esteem. Me doing all these cute things, notes, constant compliments, texting him that I was thinking about him, handmade gifts, handwritten love letters, gifts whenever I could and not receiving anything back. Of course, I told him this, and he just said, "Sorry, I don't know how to. Sorry I'm not enough," when I've showed him how to love for the past 3 years. We ended up living separately to try and work on our own issues: my anger, my impulsiveness, clingy, jealous, his lack of independence and being emotionally unavailable. I love my partner and he's a very sweet guy, but his emotional unavailability and nonchalantness has really began to bother me. He isn't abusive, he isn't mean to me, he and I get along very well with our interests, always laugh around each other. When we aren't having problems, our relationship seems perfect. We rarely if ever argue. TLDR. I am starting to feel like I am the problem because I keep bringing up subjects and I feel like I am nagging him, and that he doesn't really care as much. He takes everything I say as a personal attack and constantly makes excuses for his behavior rather than fixing it or trying to change. Is this something that he just needs to take upon himself to fix? We still both want to be together and want to work through these issues.